The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Increasing your commitment to your own security is a down payment for the future. A down payment, as you said, Mr. Secretary, of peace through strength. We're also here today to directly and unambiguously express that stark strategic realities prevent the United States of America from being primarily focused on the security of Europe. The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland. We must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. As the United States prioritizes its attention to these threats, European allies must lead from the front. We ask each of your countries to step up on fulfilling the commitments that you have made. And we challenge your countries and your citizens to double down and recommit yourselves not only to Ukraine's immediate security needs, but to Europe's long-term defense and deterrence goals. The United States will no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship which encourages dependency. Rather, our relationship will prioritize empowering Europe to own responsibility for its own security.
Empowering Europe. Those are some words that should wake us up. It should. I mean, we're really beginning to see with these historic days, it seems like every day you hardly know where to start. But we're beginning to see just how unique and also how sobering and how hard-hitting the message, the warning message coming from God's church really and truly is and will be in the coming weeks and months ahead. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show. You get to the live video stream of this program at trumpetdaily.com or at the Rumble channel. Just go to rumble.com/Trumpet Daily. You also get the evening replay on LFA TV. That's over at Rumble as well. This book taking on greater importance. Of course, it's been around since the 1940s. 6 million of these are in circulation. And it's important for us to see that, or to be reminded that history is repeating itself. I think Steve Bannon earlier today said we're living in historic times, history in the making. And of course, his take on that is that everything that's happening is positive. We've got, as you heard there from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, we've got, stark strategic realities here in the United States, here at home. We're just overextended. We cannot view Europe as a U.S. protectorate anymore. You're going to have to go it alone. You're going to have to build up your own defense. I've got an article in just a bit we'll get through from the Trumpet magazine several years ago. I mean, really, we stand alone. We're the only ones that have been even talking about this or sounding the alarm over this. Germany is already the economic head or leader of Europe. It's not yet there militarily. But what happens if Germany... Last time around, keep in mind, it was the Trump administration. I'm talking about the first term, as he was shuttling back and forth to Europe during his first 4 years, saying, look, you've got to pay your fair share. You've got to pay 2%. 2% of your GDP. Now it's 5%. And so what happens when Germany starts spending $40, $50 billion on military spending? What happens when all the other nations in Europe start doing the same thing? Well, then you have a military superpower in Europe. And to just give you an idea of what one can do with a strong military, look at Russia. It's not even close to Europe's economic power and might, and yet they've got a big military. And look at the trouble that they can cause for neighboring nations, for the world. Is that what we want? Is that what the United States wants for Germany, for the heart of Europe? Well, those of you that have been longtime followers of this program and the Trumpet.com, the Trumpet magazine, you know that the Bible prophesies of one final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. And the beating heart of that empire, as Herbert Armstrong so often told us, it's Germany. It's Germany. Listen to what Donald Trump said. This was yesterday after Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as DNI. He had this to say about, as you know, Ukraine's now in the news. He had the phone call with Vladimir Putin. And here he is talking about bringing peace to this war-torn region in Ukraine. Clip 7.
I'm just here to try and get peace. I don't care so much about anything other than I want to stop having millions of people killed. Last night, Kiev got hit very, very hard. I want to see people stop getting killed. That war is ridiculous. It should have never happened, and it would have never happened.
And, a lot of people obviously would say the same thing. A lot of world leaders even. We just want to see an end to the hostilities. We want to see peace. We want to see people stop getting killed. But as you know, he's a big promoter of deals, making a deal. And you've got Hegseth over, speaking to NATO member leaders saying, listen, the days of, the U.S. seeing Europe as a protectorate of America, they're over. I mean, these are historic developments. We had a close eye on it during the first term, as I say. This time around, though, I mean, it's straightforward. I mean, right where the Trump administration stands if you're leading Germany or France or any of the other EU nations or NATO members. History in the making. Pretty amazing. 5% of GDP. There's not too many, I think Poland is maybe the lone exception, but there's not too many nations that are spending that much money on defense in Europe. Herbert Armstrong was telling us decades ago that eventually Europe wouldn't be able to rely on American military power and strength for protection. So they'd have to go it alone. Here again, he was right. Play clip 12.
Now, one of the great things that is urging Europe on, and perhaps the greatest thing that will cause them to hurry and get together on this, is their fear of what's going on in the Kremlin and the Soviet Union. They are losing confidence in the United States as having a military umbrella over them to protect them. And they want their own military force to protect themselves.
You talk about the uniqueness of our message today. That was in 1982. Herbert Armstrong talking about a time when Europe would no longer have confidence in the United States for that military umbrella, for that military protection. And got conservative commentators like Steve Bannon saying, look, we're tired of funding this military protection so that Europeans can go off skiing at the Alps or whatever else, have all these pensions and these programs, these social programs, handouts. They're not spending anything on military. That's not to say that that America has its finances in order by any means. We've discussed that with you this week. We're paying more on interest on the national debt than we are on any other program, any other government program, including on defense. So just look at the trend lines here. Look at where we're headed. As I said yesterday, I mean, you rip the lid off all this corruption and yeah, that's great. It's exposed. But is it going to be fixed? Will the congressional leadership, will they really band together and actually pass a budget that makes the cuts that DOGE is exposing, that should be cut? We'll see. There hasn't been a lot of strength, I should say, in Congress to tighten our belts financially. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot to be made for the DOGE hoopla. We've shown you the clips this week. It's so refreshing. There's more on today's show. But what about the bottom line? What about the budgets, the big, bloated, wasteful budgets that Congress just keeps sending on through to make everybody happy? I mean, every representative, every senator, I mean, they've got to make sure there's some pork barrel spending in it for their state or their district. We're seeing a total breakdown in government all over the world, and even the 10 nations that come together in Europe. It's a mixture of iron and clay, it says in Daniel 2. So there's not lasting strength there. There is strength. And it'll be on full display for a couple years for sure. But instability, volatility, economic uncertainty, it's everywhere. I mean, and those are just a few of the challenges that we're facing as a nation, as a world, as this planet. That there's a lot of problems to go around. And a lot of people in Europe that are hitting the panic button right about now. As I say, we've been following this trend for a number of years now. This from the Trumpet in 2017. Richard Palmer said, it's easy to sympathize with Mr. Trump's criticism of NATO. And again, this goes back to Trump's first term. It's true that the U.S. has paid a lot of money to defend Europe. The current alliance has significant flaws, but Mr. Trump's solution is to push Germany to become a major military power. That's the solution. It's like we've said with respect to the Middle East. Okay, to see the problems, that's one thing, but to put forward a solution where Hamas can survive, we're coming up to a second deadline on the hostage crisis in Gaza. We'll see how that plays out Saturday. This one's from 2020. Again, it's at the Trumpet magazine. If you don't have a subscription, there's no cost or obligation. Just call our operators today and request the Trumpet magazine. You can have a free 1-year subscription, 1-866-930-3024. All of our literature we give away free. We'll give you a free copy of the U.S. and Britain in Prophecy as well. You need it. This is like the master text for Bible prophecy, for understanding the sure word of Bible prophecy, for identifying who we are, where we are in Bible prophecy. It says President Trump is not the only one who has urged Europe to increase its military spending. Emmanuel Macron has as well. And then we said, this is a dangerous trend. While the U.S. and Britain are leaving the European continent to itself, France is increasingly inviting Germany to take on more responsibility. We're not that far removed from a time when Western leaders said, no way is Germany ever going to be militarized again. It's not going to happen. In fact, Western leaders pretty much made that vow coming out of World War II. Look at how times can change, though. We forget the past. We forget about history. We forget about these traditional enemies of the United States. And now we're empowering them. We're encouraging them. You've got to get more of a military. You've got to have more firepower. You've got to take the lead. You've got to push back against Putin. And of course, we'll be saying all of this even as Germany and Putin come to some kind of an unholy alliance behind the scenes. That's history repeating itself as well. It says here, in addition to understanding history, people today would do well to understand Bible prophecy. The Bible repeatedly warns that our nations are provoking God to send great punishment. God reveals that he will use Assyria, modern-day Germany, to execute that punishment. It cites Isaiah 10 and verse 5. Look at these verses later. They're covered here in the United States and Britain in prophecy. They're discussed in this book. If you want to study this in greater depth, Ezekiel 23 is another important passage. Ezekiel 23 specifically prophesies that Germany will betray the U.S. It quotes verse 9 and says, "As punishment for its sins, God will deliver America into the hands of its enemy, which is trusted as an ally." You see, the reason, and he said it over and again, Hegseth, the reason he can speak bluntly and say you've got to pay your fair share, and we've got, these stark strategic realities at home, we've got to deal with our southern border. He says all that, saying at the same time that, hey, you guys are allies, and this alliance is strong, and it'll always be strong. We trust you. And so we go forward empowering modern-day Assyria. This is from 2016. Richard Palmer says, "This split between Europe and America is no mere knee-jerk reaction to possible Trump policies. Just calling the NATO alliance into question has made Europe's leaders realize that they cannot rely on America forever." It says it will push them to develop their own capabilities. So that's right in the spirit of what Mr. Armstrong said in 1982. We're pushing them. Look, you've got to take care of yourselves. One final one. Will Donald Trump make Germany great again? Make Germany, not America. Is he going to make Germany great again? This is from 2018. What would the world look like if the Germans suddenly spent $30 billion more on defense to finally meet its obligation? This was back in the 2% days. Now it's 5%? 5%? Tens of billions, not just Germany, but all across the continent. What would the world look like if Europe had that kind of a military? What would the world look like if Europe was backed by a military superpower or superpower strength militarily? It says, first, Germany's position in Europe would change dramatically. It already dominates the continent, but it is not Europe's biggest military power. Germany would emerge as the world's number 3 military spender, overtaking Russia. It would be on track to become the world's 3rd strongest military. Look at what Russia can do, even with the backward economy, because it has a powerful military and a government willing to use it. Here's another important point. What would a strong Germany or a militarily strong Germany look like if it also had a strong man at the helm? Well, now, that's something to contemplate. That's something to consider. Is this what the world needs? Is this what America actually wants? Evidently it is. Are we thinking far enough ahead? God takes the long view. And Herbert Armstrong, as God's servant for all 50 plus years of his ministry, he took the long view. He got to the end of his life and talked about, for some reason God's delaying a few things, but listen, the prophecies are sure. And we've also got history to help inform us as well. He was right. You can request that free brochure as well. It takes you right through the signature prophecies that Herbert Armstrong proclaimed for so many years, for most of his ministry. He was right. He certainly was. It says, but Mr. Trump did not stop at 2%. In an interview, this is an article from 2018. It talks about how that he went and suggested 4%. Well, now we're in 2025. Pete Hegseth is the new Secretary of Defense, and he's in Europe right now saying it's got to be 5%. You've got to follow Poland's example. It says a Europe that spends 4% of its economy on defense would be a superpower. A superpower. At this level, Germany's defense spending would double Russia's. As I say, look at the trouble Russia is causing with its military and its backward economy. If Germany were to suddenly spend twice as much on military, on defense, as Russia, is this what we want? It says that military development may not come until Europe has new leadership, but Europe will have to become more aggressive militarily simply to survive without American help. So we're going to be talking about this quite a lot in the coming years as we see Europe, led by Germany, fast develop into a military superpower. Listen to Mr. Armstrong in a message he gave 50-some years ago, clip 13.
And some of us, my friends, know not only what we see when we're over there, but we know also what is prophesied. And we know what is prophesied to rise up in Europe. And we know which is the one and the only nation in Europe that is capable of dominating, and which is the economic and the industrial heart of all Europe, without which there could be no stability and strength. A human body cannot live without its heart. And the economic and the military body that is to rise up and to restore the Roman Empire, the thing that we least suspect here in the United States, it cannot rise up without its heart. And its heart is in Germany.
Its heart is in Germany. We have another book, The Holy Roman Empire in Prophecy. If you don't have that in your library, you can add this to the U.S. and Britain in Prophecy and really get the big picture overview of what's coming. Everything that Herbert Armstrong has said, we're seeing it come to pass. The only thing that was held up or delayed these many, many years since his death in 1986 really has been the military strength of Europe. And a lot of the reason for that is because America's been providing that and footing the bill along the way. And the Trump administration, we're 3 weeks in. The Trump administration has made it clear that's it. It's over. That's essentially what happened yesterday. That's historic. This is significant, what we're seeing right now. Bible prophecy is being fulfilled. It's exciting. I mean, to think we're this much closer to the return of Jesus Christ to this earth. When we come back, we'll shift gears a little bit and continue to expose government waste and fraud and corruption like you've never seen. I mean, it's just happening. It's being exposed in virtually every department of U.S. government. We have that and much more when we come back. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We'll be right back.
Daily news, Bible prophecy. See the connection on the Trumpet Daily. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the flood of news and information? You need something to sift the news and bring you only what matters most. You need the Trumpet Daily. You also need something to help you understand not just what's happening now, but what will happen next. You need the Trumpet Daily. Only the Trumpet Daily accurately matches daily news to precise Bible prophecies. Because Bible prophecy is the only tool up to the task of sifting the news down to what's important and showing you what will happen next. Join host Stephen Flurry every weekday. Go to trumpetdaily.com.
This report tells us how to cut waste, cut red tape, streamline the bureaucracy, change procurement rules, change the personnel rules and create a government that works better and costs less.
I've read it, and where it says the president should, the president will.
Among the 800 recommendations, eliminating 12% of the federal workforce, merging some government agencies like the FBI, the DEA, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, closing hundreds of government offices outside Washington.
From the day I took office, one of the commitments that I made to the American people was that we would do a better job here in Washington in rooting out wasteful spending. We thought that it was entirely appropriate for our governments and our agencies to try to root out waste, large and small, in a systematic way. It means cutting some programs that I think are worthy, but we may not be able to afford right now. A lot of the action is in Congress, and legislative, but in the meantime, we don't need to wait for Congress in order to do something about wasteful spending that's out there. We haven't seen as much action out of Congress as we'd like, and that's why we launched on our own initiative the campaign Cut Waste. And we're going to keep on finding every possible way that we can do that, even if Congress is not acting. There you go.
There you go. Elon Musk tweeted this video out earlier today. What happened? I mean, this has always been popular with voters. Streamlining government, cutting wasteful programs. You heard them. These are the most prominent Democrats. And of course, there you've got the dear leader. The dear leader's talking about, listen, we're establishing our own task force to eliminate waste in government, to blend agencies together if we have to just get rid of this. How inefficient it is, how costly it is. And of course, they never follow through on it. They just get in there and make the size of government even more bloated. They expand it even more. That's what the dear leader did. It's what Clinton did. It's what they all do. They talk. It was kind of like, let's move the embassy to Jerusalem. You talk about it during campaign season, and then as soon as you're voted in, well, you forget about it, of course. Of course we're not going to move the embassy. Of course we're not going to actually reduce the size of government. That would reduce our power. And then here comes Donald Trump together with Elon Musk. And they're wanting to do what you actually heard right there in that montage. Fire people. Fire 12% of government? Is that what Clinton and them were prepared to do? I guess so. And it was popular. If you can imagine that. It was very popular. It still is. It still is. Jesse Waters made this point last night, how that, if you look back in the archives, you see Biden and others talking about how that we need to tighten our financial belt. This is clip 9.
The Washington Post did a whole 6-part series about bloated federal bureaucracy during the Obama years on the cave, the VA, Medicare fraud, Social Security. Even Biden was pro-DOGE.
As long as there is waste and fraud in government and serious waste and fraud, people lose confidence in the ability of their government to do their job for them, deal with their taxpayers' dollars. And when taxpayers' money is wasted in a fraudulent behavior, it robs the taxpayers not only their money, but it undercuts the ability to us to serve the people we're elected to serve.
It robs the taxpayer. If it's fraudulent, if it's reckless government spending, that's straight up truth right there. They all know it. This is why, as I said yesterday, that they're between a rock and a hard place, the radical leftist Democrats, because they know that everybody in America wants to see things streamlined. They want to see it downsized. They want to see a more efficient government. But at the same time, these radicals, they don't want to be exposed for being on the take. So they're in a very difficult position. Well, let's just go after Elon Musk. Who voted it in? Nobody voted for him. Nobody voted for his team of IT techies. So go after the messenger. Even that, when you think of it, that's a pretty bad strategy to go after not just the world's richest man, but for sure one of the smartest men in the world as well. Listen to clip 10.
The president hired a rocket scientist to open up America's books. He's literally a rocket scientist, the world's greatest IT guy. Math, accounting, engineering, computer science. It's child's play. Musk found more fraud in 3 weeks than the House Oversight Committee found in 30 years.
He's exactly right. 3 weeks. I mean, it's like I said, it's like one thunderbolt every day. And more of them, in fact, more than one. As you look at the news cycle, there's no shortage of things to cover on this show or any show. Here comes the rocket scientist. I mean, he knows his way around computer files. He's sifting through them, he and his team. And look at what he's finding. Like I said yesterday, I mean, look at how bad this makes Congress look. The Congressional Budget Office. I mean, they'll sound the alarm here and there, but nobody does anything. And again, we'll see what happens with the CR that's supposed to come out in March. And whether or not Donald Trump's going to stick to his guns and actually reduce these big bloated spending packages. If you identify the waste, what changes if you keep sending the EPA the same amount of money that you did last time you put together a budget? If the EPA finds, as we just heard yesterday, that $20 billion was misspent, that was thrown off the Titanic like gold bars, then do you reduce the EPA's funding by $20 billion? You should, at least $20 billion. Listen to the new EPA head. This is Lee Zeldin exposing a scheme, here again, orchestrated by radical Democrats to fund these shadowy NGOs to the tune of $20 billion. This is clip 4.
One of my very top priorities at EPA is to be an excellent steward of your hard-earned tax dollars. There will be zero tolerance of any waste and abuse. An extremely disturbing video circulated 2 months ago featuring a Biden EPA political appointee talking about how they were tossing gold bars off the Titanic, rushing to get billions of your tax dollars out the door before Inauguration Day. The gold bars were tax dollars, and tossing them off the Titanic meant the Biden administration knew they were wasting it. Shockingly, roughly $20 billion of your tax dollars were parked at an outside financial institution by the Biden EPA. This scheme was the first of its kind in EPA history, and it was purposefully designed to obligate all of the money in a rush job with reduced oversight. Even further, this pot of $20 billion was awarded to just 8 entities that were then responsible for doling out your money to NGOs and others at their discretion with far less transparency. Just under $7 billion was sent to one entity called the Climate United Fund. The financial agent agreement with the bank needs to be instantly terminated, and the bank must immediately return all of the gold bars that the Biden administration tossed off the Titanic. EPA needs to reassume responsibility for all of these funds. The days of irresponsibly shoveling boatloads of cash to far-left activist groups in the name of environmental justice and climate equity are over. The American public deserves a more transparent and accountable government than what transpired these past 4 years.
So he's like so many others in these agencies. Pete Hegseth, he's saying, yeah, come on in to the Pentagon. We've failed an audit ourselves 7, 8, 9 times. I mean, on the positive side, just going back to the confirmations, RFK makes it through today. Tulsi, she's sworn in yesterday. Kash Patel probably tomorrow. Just thinking about these kinds of people as Pam Bondi said, the DOJ, as she unleashed a little bit of lawfare of her own on Kathy Hochul and Letitia James, New York, because of their illegal practices, bringing in all of these illegal migrants. This is a new administration. Bondi said as much yesterday. This is a new DOJ. Thinking about these people like what you just saw there, Lee Zeldin, being in power for 4 years. Some of them aren't even in yet. And the others in for a week or two. And then you look at just the tone and the pace of this administration for 3.5 weeks. Donald Trump joked yesterday in the Oval Office as Tulsi Gabbard's being sworn in. He gets done, he signs everything, and then says, I guess there aren't any questions. And then the press corps just unloads. Mr. President, he's accessible. He's there every day. Impromptu in many cases. It's a very, very different administration with a very, very different approach to domestic policies and foreign. We got to keep that in mind. We got to keep that in our view as well. As prophecy accelerates, here's Lee Zeldin revealing that $20 billion in taxpayer funds laundered by Joe Obama, and all the more so while he's a lame duck. I mean, they were spending billions even during the interim period when President-elect was there, or when President Trump was the president-elect. Here's the Washington Post take on this fraud, this treason. It says Trump, this is the title, Trump EPA chief accuses Biden of tossing gold bars off the Titanic. I mean, they get it completely wrong in the title. He's not accusing the EPA of throwing gold bars off the Titanic. It was a high-ranking EPA official that actually said that actually bragged about that on video. It was caught on video, undercover, but it was said in December. Listen, we got to throw the gold bars over so Trump can't use them. Let's put it to our pet programs. This is criminal. This is how they view their job, their responsibilities as stewards of your money. Yeah, just throw billions to left-wing programs on climate change. Look at how corrupt these news agencies are. You just heard from that clip that I played of Jesse Waters. He said, back in the Obama days, the Washington Post had a 6-part series on, what was it? Bloated federal bureaucracy. 6 parts. And then I read to you yesterday the Washington Post article that says DOGE is unconstitutional. There you go. Now the Washington Post is pro-bloat. There you go. Can you just not report the truth? Is this not something to celebrate, as I said yesterday on the show? We're trimming the fat. We're saving money. And now you've actually got radical activist judges saying you cannot save money. You must spend. That's the world that we're living in. The Post says here, the EPA will try to claw back $20 billion that the Biden administration approved for climate projects, says Lee Zeldin, claiming, listen to this, here's their favorite phrase, claiming without evidence that the money was awarded in a rush job with reduced oversight. The EPA official admitted this on video. Okay? Then they go after Zeldin. Now the Washington Post, as I say, they're today, because Trump's in there, they're pro-bloat, okay? There's our new term for the day, pro-bloat. They love the bloat. They love the fat. They love the waste. They love the fraud. They love the criminal activity. They love spending billions, or at least promoting the idea of spending billions in the shadows. The move, which is likely to draw legal challenges, escalates Donald Trump's efforts to freeze climate funding across the federal government. It comes despite a federal judge's ruling Monday that the administration has been violating a court order to release tens of billions of dollars in federal grants. Translation: a court order to spend more money. You cannot, thou shalt not save money. It says here, though he did not mention the bank by name, I guess it's Citibank, that's controlling a lot of these funds, and Trump's people are saying you got to give it back. These are stolen funds. Trump's saying the same thing to Reuters. Look, it wasn't just Politico. Reuters got tens of millions as well. Trump's saying you got to return it. They're all in bed, aren't they? They're all corrupt. They're all in it to destroy or fundamentally transform the United States of America. Listen to Donald Trump yesterday in the Oval Office as he talks about all of this wasteful spending, and that's putting it nicely. Clip 8.
When you look at the kind of money, billions and billions of dollars being thrown away illegally, and there's no chance. I mean, I say it in front of our Attorney General, there's no chance that there's not kickbacks or something going on. When you give millions and millions of dollars to somebody that stands to look at something for 15 minutes and walks away with millions of dollars, that money's coming back in some form. And that's only one form of corruption. The biggest thing is what they do to our country. They're taking massive amounts of money and spending it on items. I went through a list of 200 expenditures that were made, and I found 3 that looked like they were reasonable. Okay, 3.
Only 3 out of 200. So much waste. To the point where these bureaucrats, they brag about it. Yeah, we were like throwing gold bars off the Titanic. It was fun. It was fun to spend taxpayer dollars, to spend billions of dollars. In the Federalist, it says here, the judge who is trying to force President Trump to resume spending billions of taxpayer dollars once likened Trump to a tyrant. Uh-oh, another undercover video unearthed. He's a big old donor to left-wing causes, this judge, who's supposed to be impartial. You know, he's objective. He's just carrying out his constitutional duty. No, he's just some low-life random judge who hates Donald Trump, who calls Donald Trump a tyrant. He's the one trying to impose his will on Trump's administration. You must spend. Thou shalt spend. One of our news gatherers, by the way, noted all this corruption in the judiciary, and how that, I forget when it came out, he referred to no freedom without law. I think it was the year 2000. And how that in a lot of ways, no freedom without law is almost like a prequel to America Under Attack. It's really the first branch of government that my father identified as being so completely and thoroughly corrupted by evil, by greed, by selfishness, by radical leftist programs. And then you see that radical leftist or that communist infiltration just swell to the point that it did under the dear leader and the fake president. And yes, God has exposed it, and God has now silenced Obama. But how are you going to change the corruption, the radical ideology in these federal courts? You add to that the fact that Amos 7 says that the kingdom's court would be aligned with Jeroboam. The Supreme Court, in other words, that has final say. You can see why God, you can see in order to save Israel from being blotted out, you can see why God had a hand in even organizing the Supreme Court over the past many years, with the last 3 confirmations in particular. It had to be that way for Donald Trump's agenda to even go forward. As I say, we're probably not that far away from the Supremes weighing in on all of this lawfare and just giving some kind of a blanket ruling that this is crazy. You don't have the power of the presidency if you're in some federal court in Rhode Island or Hawaii. Listen to President Trump. Again, this was during the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard, and he's talking here about the Department of Education. Listen to clip 2.
Look, the Department of Education's a big con job. We're ranked, so they rank the top 40 countries in the world. We're ranked number 40th, but we're ranked number 1 in one department, costs per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, but we're ranked number 40. We've been between 38 and 40. The last time I looked, it was 38, and then I looked 2 days ago, it came out the new list. It came out at number 40, so we're ranked 40. Norway, Denmark, Sweden, I hate to say it, China, as big as it is, it's ranked in the top 5, and that's a primary competitor. We're ranked number 40. So if we're ranked number 40, that means something's really wrong, right?
We're at the bottom of the list in terms of student performance, but we're right at the top of the list, far and away at the top of the list as far as spending is concerned. If there's one thing they know how to do well in Washington, in the swamp, that's to waste money, to spend money without any restraint, without any guideline, without any oversight. This is why they're furious right now. This is why their heads are exploding, because of what Elon Musk is doing. He's a rocket scientist, literally, and he's exposing them. AOC can say he's dumb all she wants. He's exposing how dumb, how stupid, and how lawless so many of them are. It's the lawlessness that's the worst, because it's unconstitutional. It's robbing people. You know, you think of that section in Malachi 3. I know it applies to God's work and the church and so on. But when you take the tithes and the offerings that were given to God, and then you use that for your own evil designs, God says you're stealing from God. Well, it's, I guess, not a perfect analogy, but the American taxpayers, they're sending money to Washington every year, trillions and trillions worth. And they want to know where that money is going, as they should. And now we're finding out where it's going. Listen to this from that committee hearing on DOGE and its activities. This is headed up by Marjorie Taylor Greene. We played a bit from her yesterday, but this is actually in the White House press conference with Carolyn Leavitt, who is responding here to some of the revelations in Greene's committee. Clip 3.
Back to DOGE just for a second. Earlier, the subcommittee headed by Chairman Marjorie Taylor Greene, her and her staff discovered $2.7 trillion in improper payments to Medicare, Medicaid, overseas, to people who should not have gotten it. Some of this room might have missed that press conference. Can you elaborate on what the president is thinking at this point?
Well, again, that's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that DOGE is identifying on a daily basis. I would say that is certainly fraud. There's also a lot of contracts they've identified that, just as a hypothetical example, are $1 million, but only $500,000 went out the door. So where's the rest of that cash?
In the shadows. Where's the other $500,000? Nobody knows. $2.7 trillion revealed in that committee. And mentioned by a reporter. I think he's from Right Side Broadcasting. He's now welcome in the press room there at the White House, thanks to the new administration. Never would have been there before. And so we're hearing things, we're seeing things, we're getting questions that are actually helpful, that are actually revealing problems that need to be dealt with, that need to be confronted. We'll see, as I say, how much success there is. So much corruption, though, top to bottom. And then just coming back to the regime media, you got the Washington Post flip-flopping on bloat. Now they're pro-bloat. Here's Politico. Politico, which had the funding dry up. The federal funding for Politico, the media organization, it dried up with the emergence of Trump. Voters were right up. So now they're trying to, make nice with Trump. And then you get stories like this. Voters were right about the economy. The data was wrong. No, you were wrong. No, in fact, you were lying when you were out there echoing the talking points of all the Democrats saying, hey, the economy's never been better. Wages are going up. There's a little bit of inflation, but that's transitory. But the wages are increasing more than inflation. Remember that one? They were lying all through the campaign cycle, trying to prop up Kamala Harris and her fake candidacy. I saw a tweet from Rasmussen saying that the Kamala people have admitted they never were leading in the polls. Never, never, never. But are you going to get that bit of a truth bomb, last July or April or even in October? No, I've never seen anything like it, they said after the Democrat convention. This is like 2008. This is Obama-esque. It's sweeping across the country. She's so popular. She's so well received. And the economy, it's never been better. And now Politico comes along and says, actually, the voters were right. Before the presidential election, many Democrats were puzzled by the seeming disconnect between economic reality as reflected in various government statistics and the public's perceptions of the economy on the ground. Many in Washington bristled at the public's failure to register how strong the economy really was. They charged that right-wing echo chambers were conning voters into believing entirely preposterous narratives about America's decline. What they rarely considered was whether something else might be responsible for the disconnect, whether, for instance, government statistics were fundamentally flawed. You mean the government lied? You mean all of these government agencies that steal money and throw gold bars off the Titanic? You mean they would actually be dishonest and deceitful as well? I mean, all of these agencies should be on the chopping block for a variety of sins, not just one. They're dishonest. They lie. To hear the hearing this morning on Kash Patel, he makes it through the committee, by the way, so he's got a floor vote coming. And to hear one of the Democrats saying, he's not qualified for the FBI. I mean, the FBI is founded on truth. Okay, got it. Yeah, the FBI would never lie about General Flynn or about the FISA document. None of spying on Trump, Russia collusion. These people lie as part of their profession. They're professional liars. The government statistics were fundamentally flawed, not just a little bit off. I mean, fundamentally, they were wrong. What if numbers supporting the case for broad-based prosperity were themselves misrepresentations? What if, in fact, darker assessments of the economy were more authentically tethered to reality? What if, in other words, you read between the lines, what if Donald Trump was actually right? Further on, it says, cities that appeared increasingly seedy, regions that see, he's talking about his own experiences, what he's now writing about, what he's observed in cities, what others of his colleagues have observed. Cities that appeared increasingly seedy, regions that seemed derelict, driving into the office each day in Washington. I noted a homeless encampment fixed outside the Federal Reserve itself. And then I began to detect a second pattern inside and outside the D.C. alike. Democrats, on the whole, seemed much more inclined to believe what the economic indicators reported. Republicans, by contrast, seemed more inclined to believe what they were seeing with their own two eyes. Yet another example of an article that would have never been posted during the rule of Joe Obama. Not a chance. But now here comes Politico, fighting for its survival, lacking the federal funding it once had under Joe Obama, and printing, as it happens, printing a little bit of truth. That's all we have time for on today's show. I took you a minute over. I'm not going to charge you for that. This is free content. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We thank you for joining us on today's show, and we'll see you again tomorrow.